Hello, welcome to this lesson. We're going to learn how to go backwards. We're going to take a decimal and learn how to write it as a fraction or as a rational number. So in the previous couple of sections, we've gone the other way. I've given you the fraction, the rational number, as a fraction, and I told you to write it as a decimal. Now we're going to go backwards the other way. So let's start out with some easier concepts, some easier problems. What if I give you the decimal 0.2 and I said write this as a rational number? In your brain you need to think, well, what they really want is they want me to write it as a fraction. So how do I write this as a fraction? Well, any decimal that stops like this, it's a finite decimal, they're always really easy to write as fractions because the only number that really matters here is the number 2. So it's easier to see with a pattern. The way you would write this is 2 over what? You have to write it over something in order to get it to equal 0.2, so you would divide it by 10. So this is the fraction that this is equal to. There's not really much calculation involved. The reason you're writing it like this is because the decimal is here. When you write the number 2, the decimal is in the back. When you divide by 10, you're moving the decimal to the front. So when you have a decimal that's non-repeating and just terminates like that, you always want to write it over some multiple of 10, like divided by 10 or divided by 100 or divided by 1,000. In this case, you're dividing by 10 because you move the decimal up 1 and it's equal to 0.2. Now, 2/10, you can simplify that. You can divide top and bottom by 2, so really you could say it's 1/5. So this is the answer you would circle, 1/5 on your test. All right, let's take a look at another example. We'll just get a little bit of practice here. 0.325. How do I write that as a fraction? Well, it's the same thing. It's a finite, non-repeating, decimal. It stops. So the only numbers that matter are the 325, and you can always write it over some power of 10. What do you need to divide it by to turn 325 into 0.325? Well, you want the decimal to go 1, 2, 3 spots backwards. So in order to do that, you divide by 1,000. So because the decimal is here at the end, move it 3 spots up, and that's what you get. So this is the answer, but you can simplify that by dividing the top by 25 and divided by the bottom by 25. So that at the end of the day, when you divide the top by 25, you'll get 13. When you divide the bottom by 25, you'll get 40. So the answer is 13 divided by 40, or 13/40ths. That's what you would write down. The final one that we're going to do of this nature is going to be 0.38. How would you write that as a rational number? Again, the only numbers that matter are the 38. What do you need to divide it by to move this decimal 2 spots here? Well, you divide it by 100 because the number of zeros, you have 2 zeros, so when you divide, you're going to be moving the decimal 2 spots. So 38 over 100 is the right answer, but you can divide top and bottom by 2, for instance, just to simplify it. 38 divided by 2 is 19, 100 divided by 2 is 50, and that's what you would circle on your test. So the first part of this lesson is very, very simple. If you're given a decimal that doesn't repeat and go on to infinity and go on to, forever and ever and ever, it's very easy. You just take the numbers involved and you divide them. In this case, we divided by 10 to move the decimal spot 1. In this case, we divided by 100 to move the decimal spot 2 places. In this case, we divided by 1,000 to move the decimal spot 3 places. You see the pattern there. And so for any decimal that just stops, you can always do that. Divide by 10, divide by 100, divide by 1,000, maybe divide by 10,000, depending on the decimal you have to move it and to get it to be right. But the question comes up, so these problems are fairly easy to get the pattern and see what to do. What happens if you have an infinite repeating decimal? Like what about 0.2222222?